So about 4 weeks ago, I was sitting on the floor and journaling, and I was just thinking about a few things. I think I was thinking about my work and how I used Canva some time ago to make a research poster, and that led me to the thought of like when was like I the last time I used Canva before that. And I believe it was a long time ago when I uploaded a YouTube video, and it might have been about 3 years ago now. It was a long time ago. The funny thing about that was when I released that video, I was actually planning for like weekly videos. That never happened. But then it got me thinking about what I'd want to make videos about now if I were to upload regularly. And because I don't really stick to one game, a lot of people like know me for my recent like Unite streams and stuff like that. But I don't know if I really want to stick to that game. But realistically, most content creators stick to one avenue because it's just what makes sense. You grow an audience like sticking to one game. But with me recently, I think I just like to play many different games. So I was thinking, what could I possibly make YouTube videos about that wouldn't be necessarily the same game, but could be like similar videos of some kind of similar umbrella? So it got me thinking, and it was like, I really like introspection and thinking about things recently, especially because I'm trying to improve things in my own life. So I've kind of like tried to get better at metacognition, which in very simple terms is just thinking about thinking, like thinking about why you think in certain ways. And it kind of ties into like stuff I've been reading recently and a lot of journaling. And I've made like certain theories and revelations with my own life, which have kind of really helped me to reframe things that I may have been suffering like throughout my entire life, that may have been like things from childhood that like have not been resolved, they've been left unresolved. And I was thinking, I really like internalizing these things and vocalizing them, albeit not in the most perfect way sometimes because I do stumble. So I think I've always wanted to perhaps make some videos where I'm talking about these things, but I think I've always been a bit apprehensive because I know they won't be perfect. I know I may stumble, and also the fear of like I'm not going to include everything I want to say because that will just be how it will be. Like, oh, like finish the video, probably upload and be like, wait, I could have said like a multitude of different things. And I mean, it's been 4 weeks and I still haven't uploaded the video yet. I was obsessed with perfectionism. I think I was like, it doesn't sound great. And then I recorded something about a week ago where I was looking over a journal entry, and it was some thoughts I was thinking about how to avoid perfection or like striving for perfection. And also, it was linked to like the power of like doing things in just 5 minute intervals, even if you think it'll be like the most insignificant like steps just to do so anyway. And I'll admit, there's probably things like when going back to listen to it, I won't be entirely happy. I'll be like, there's things that I could say more, could say further. But I think I'm gonna accept that for now and go ahead and upload a few videos where I'm basically speaking through my thoughts. And if I can help just a few people to like watch the video and like they end up reflecting on certain things and perhaps gaining some ideas for concepts that they can apply to their own life, then that'll kind of be like my goal achieved, right? I don't really care too much if the videos gain a lot of traction, but the ultimate goal I've always had in my life is like I would like to like make an impact for other people and help them to improve in their own ways. So I think that's what these videos will aim to do. Just like a little chilled video of me speaking with some gameplay in the background, and who knows, maybe it'll become like a weekly thing. We'll see how it goes. So this is an idea that I thought of yesterday. So I guess this was while I was reading. Um, yeah, I think it was while I was reading. What ideas kind of sparked it off for me when reading? Well, the page I was reading about was about the words we speak and how that we can, if we're not careful, we will be reinforcing a belief. And that took me back to the stream that I had the previous day, where someone came in and they seemed to be like kind of borderline backseating in a way, or maybe I misunderstood it for backseating. I kind of, you know, they just came in. They're like, can I tell you something about the game before you do this? And you know, it's a little bit kind of like backseating, but also like perhaps they just wanted to really share their knowledge. And they're like, wow, your character's doing no damage. Mine was doing this much damage. And it's just like it was the kind of vibe. It was like backseating. I was polite regardless, and I felt maybe I had to like reinforce to myself that it's okay to set boundaries while also being polite. I felt a bit on display, I guess, because I'm like I think I feel that in general in games when I'm if I'm streaming and I'm dying over and over, I'm like, damn, I'm looking like a complete fraud because people are just watching me die over and over, and perhaps they're like, you know, perhaps this isn't for you or something. And these are just terrible beliefs that are just being reinforced throughout the course of most people's lives. Like, if they don't get something straight away, if they struggle, um, they tend to get told that, you know, come on, quit while you're ahead. And it's like, why are you continuing this? It's clearly it's not for you. So I think it was around shame of making mistakes, shame of dying over and over, and things like that. In general, it's not just limited to games, but shame of making the mistake over and over on display to other people. That tends to lead to feelings of insecurity, of perhaps, you know, a comment is going to come your way soon about, you know, perhaps you should give it up. But that's just the thing, like you're giving power to people's words, when in reality, acknowledging that a comment may come that way because it's a pretty natural way for other people to think in general. When you're judging someone else, you're like, you know, this person's failing a few times, why are they still doing it again? It's a pretty natural thing. I think we are guilty of doing it to other people too. It's just, I think it's a pretty natural thing. When we observe someone failing over and over, I think we probably do think in our heads, like, why don't they just stop? You know, we see them in pain perhaps. Maybe it's a natural response. Um, Recently I've kind of come under the idea that it's so damaging to children when that happens. Like, you know, if a child is struggling to answer a maths problem perhaps, and perhaps the problem is one that a teacher would consider to be quite easy. Perhaps it's like, I don't know, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Like, probably relatively easy, especially when you're a young child. But perhaps the child is taking a little bit longer to answer it. And you don't know the reason for why they're taking longer. Perhaps they are just a little bit slow and they can't really understand it, or perhaps they're thinking of it in a different way. Instead of thinking in the factual way of, I don't know, 2 plus 2 equals 4, perhaps they're like super visualizing it and it's taking them a while to understand because they're trying to piece together information in a completely different way. It's very easy for the teacher to just completely dismiss them and be like, you're too slow. Maybe maths isn't for you or something like that. I don't think people say that to little kids anyway, but they could do. I don't really know because I'm not in schooling environments, and any memory that I do have of schooling environments will be completely skewed because it's a long, long time ago. But I do think that even if people don't say it directly, people do tend to get frustrated when people don't do things quickly, especially young children and things like that. Um, for example, like when a young child is perhaps putting their coat on and they're perfectly capable of doing it, or perhaps tying their shoelaces, they're perfectly capable of doing these things. But perhaps it takes them maybe 3 minutes to do it, whereas it could take you about 20 seconds. A lot of parents will just intervene to like make it a lot quicker, and they'll think that they're helping. But in general, you're probably not helping the child's development if you're doing for them things that they could be doing for themselves. Because a lot of it comes with good intent too. You're like, this guy's struggling. I'm just gonna help him really quickly. You know, send him on his way to school or something. He's gonna get late for school. Let me just do it. And maybe that's a bit more of a valid reason. If someone's gonna be late to something, then perhaps you want to intervene. But if there's no strict boundaries in like terms of timelines that you have to meet, then I think you should let a child take their time in making mistakes and gradually overcoming the mistakes. You know, perhaps they're not tying it correctly. Perhaps they need to like do it a few times. It's a pretty frustrating event. For me, I don't know. I don't know if my motor coordination hasn't always been the best, but I think I've always struggled to tie shoelaces and things like that. So it can be a frustrating thing when you're like looking at other people doing something, and that's comparison, I guess. And you're like, why can't I do this? And then if you put like certain things like shame into the act of making mistakes or being too slow, then I think people tend to like shy away, and perhaps that's where procrastination comes from, because you don't want to attempt to do something because you're like, I've failed this many times before, and I have such a concept around failure that's just associated with shame, and I don't think most people even realize that. I think that's why people get really defensive. I know me personally, a lot of my self defensiveness, if I really like think about it and like stop myself in the moment before I say something, I'm like, wait, why am I feeling this way? And if I actually like look at the root cause, or like what I think to be the root cause, I do think it's something rooted in the fact that it's something that happened perhaps when I was younger, and I'm like, oh, that sparked off like a negative reaction. I can think of perhaps one because I've always liked games and stuff growing up. Like who doesn't, right? Like to children, like games are fun, and it's like it's it's it generally sparks interest because it's like quick rewards and things like that. But I think in general, certain people, what I perceived to be when I was younger is I was getting put down for certain things. Like I'd be like talking about games, and if I was seen to be talking about games by certain people, they'd be like, "Why are you always talking about games?" And they would like compare me to like someone else and be like, "Why is this guy talking about actual like important topics, but you whenever I see you, you're just talking about games and stuff like that." And eventually, what that led to is me still feeling around those certain groups of people that I can't be myself, that I can't speak about my interests because perhaps my interests are not good enough for them. And what that really did, the way I processed it when younger, was it kind of created it. The way I handled it was that I created a mask for myself that around certain groups of people, I'm not going to be myself. I'm gonna like pretend I'm interested in other stuff, or just maybe not speak at all because if I speak, I don't know. This is kind of interesting, honestly. Uh, Very interesting topic that could go on for ages and like different tangents and stuff like that. I think a lot of this does all relate to one core idea too. So it's hard to branch things into different topics. So I think a lot of the topics do stem deep down to failures and like the way failures were processed or like criticism and failures. 'Cause I think when you're quite young, you can't distinguish the reason for why people do things, or you may not know the reason for why people do things. You see things, everyone in general, like no matter if you're young or you're an adult, you see things due to your own paradigms and your own beliefs, like your own knowledge of the situation. It can lead you to thinking like this happened because this person's mean, or this happened because this person's I don't know, insecure or something like that. That could just be your view on something, but you might never know the actual truth of why someone does something. You just have your own beliefs about something. So when you're younger and you get told off for certain things or you get criticized for certain things, it's harder to see the bigger picture and why this person might be saying something. And they may have gone about it completely the wrong way. Um, so what I'm trying to say is like perhaps if you get told off for something or if you get told you're too slow, what the person may be trying to say is, how can we speed it up? But what they're saying to you is like, why are you so slow? Perhaps it isn't for you. I don't think people realize the power of their own words, especially when they talk to kids and stuff like that as well. And the kid probably isn't gonna think about, what's the deeper meaning behind this? They don't think, oh, I'm too slow. There's something wrong with me. Perhaps I shouldn't do this. This is unsafe. Perhaps I shouldn't attempt it again. It does make me think like how many people have been told that certain avenues aren't for them. Like maybe maths isn't for me. Maybe this isn't for me. And it's just like a self-limiting belief that could have been said so innocently without proper thought for the consequences down the line, but it led to like someone thinking that perhaps this isn't for me. I'm taking too long. People are shouting at me. They're not really happy with my process along like whatever avenue it is, and it's just like it's hard to live a life without any self-limiting beliefs being put on you. But when you're a child, you can't see it for what it is. You just take things with self-value, kind of, right? Because when you're a child, you're really suggestible. I mean, it's just like a known fact, right? Like you're completely suggestible. You're learning from your environment. So if your environment is imposing certain things on you, you're just gonna like take it for face value. If you get told you're a certain way, or something's wrong with you, you're probably just gonna take it and like internalize it in the way that you do. And if you're unlucky enough to internalize it in a way that's not particularly helpful, I think that does stem to adulthood in very different ways. But a lot of like the quote unquote negative habits that you see people exhibit, like perhaps being super self defensive, lashing out, being super insecure, blaming other people, feeling bitter towards the rest of the world. I think that does stem very deep down to like, experiences of failure and how it was internalized when younger. Because in general, I think most people do have a certain shame around failure. Like if you fail, there is a great shame in it in general because it's like you don't do it first time and perhaps you're comparing to other people and it appears that they're also doing it first time. And in general, people are brutal. When you see someone different or you see someone failing and you see someone like, below the rest of the pack, you kind of do point at them and you laugh at them in general. Like kids do that all the time. And maybe that's something evolutionary, like perhaps, if you're looking in some sort of tribal kind of context, you're looking at the person that's falling behind, slacking, or like failing. Perhaps it is like something evolutionary to point out the person that's behind everyone else, and laugh at them. And from the person who's actually on the receiving end of all that, they probably receive it as like an immediate sign for like danger. They're like, oh, I'm being singled out because I'm not good enough at this. And if you look at it from a logical context, it would be like, okay, I don't want to try this thing again because I'm not good at it, because I'm getting laughed at, I'm getting singled out, and that's danger. If you're looking at it in like some sort of tribal context, you're gonna probably get thrown out of the tribe if you're like terrible at something, right? That's just me theorizing, of course. And like I think I've read certain pieces of literature or just little quotes and stuff. Not great, not a great deal of literature that does support that. Whether people are right or wrong is a different thing because a lot of things is quite theoretical. I don't really know exactly the scientific backing between a lot of ideas, but that the idea does make sense from a theoretical point of view. Where you're just thinking, like it makes sense. You get singled out for like being too slow. You get laughed at. You get like discarded from your friend group or your tribe or whatever like that. Even if you don't get actually discarded, you're getting laughed at and stuff like that, which is like signals danger and stuff like that. So it signals humiliation in failure or being too slow, humiliation and shame, and in general, I think these kind of things do like really point towards perhaps triggers for procrastination and perfectionism and stuff like that. Because it does lead to things like, I don't want to do this thing because I might fail. Like if I use it in the context of perhaps something academic, how many people like don't want to start an essay because they don't feel like they know enough about it? They're like, okay, I want to start it when I know enough. But the thing is, you'll never know enough until you start it. Because if you start it and you write complete gibberish and you make mistakes, what you find is that when you actually start the task, you're like, okay, let me actually research more and think, okay, okay, that doesn't make sense. Let me look into it. What is the actual truth in this? Okay, I'm actually learning now because I'm actually started the task. But so many people don't start the task because of fear of failure, because of like the shame that's attached to that. But if you look at it, the realism of the shame, it's not actually there's not actually much danger in it. Like say you start an essay and you write complete gibberish. I'm talking about not in an examination context, like in your own time kind of context when you're like not exam conditions, but you're doing coursework or something like that. There's no shame in it. You write some gibberish. Who cares? You can correct it. But so many people don't want to start because they're like they look for this desired state for when they're going to be ready to start the task. But your thing is you're never going to be ready unless you actually start the task, and it's so counterproductive. I think so many people don't want to spend 5 minutes on something because for your brain it's kind of costly to think about, right? If it's like this difficult task that you've got history and failure and stuff like that, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna fail again, and failure is really costly in my brain. But the thing is, um, for those tasks, 5 minutes seems so long. But then sometimes you have these sometimes when you wait longer than 5 seconds and your prefrontal cortex kicks in a kind of maladaptive way, you will tell yourself things like 5 minutes, that's not enough time. Like how many tasks is there? Like I think this is actually very linked to like the phenomenon of when like the relatable kind of idea that the time ticks past like the hour. So perhaps you're gonna start at 6 p.m., but it hits 6:01. You're like, oh, okay, I'll start at 6:30 now. It's just like it's just the idea of the perfect time is ruined. I think it also takes to like when you know you got like an appointment in a few hours. You're like, okay, the whole day is ruined. Like I can't do anything. A few hours isn't enough time to do what I want to do, and I think people will like relate to that in ADHD and stuff. I'm pretty sure people relate to that in general. It's not just people with ADHD. Perhaps it is just an ADHD thing. But in general, like, I have an appointment in a few hours. It's like in the middle of the day. The whole day's ruined. I can't get anything done before that. But the thing is, when you look at it in a different context, sometimes you can't even start a task for 5 minutes because you're like, that's so, like I don't want to do it because it's so difficult, or like I'm not going to get anything done. But something I was thinking about the other day was like, although I think it's because we're obsessed with perfectionism, and I'm personally like that too. But even in like the smaller kind of area, you're like 5 minutes isn't enough. If you were like, imagine you were to read for 5 minutes a day, in the long term you might get a lot done. But the idea of it seems pretty unattractive. You're like 5 minutes, 5 minutes. You're not gonna internalize things properly. You're just gonna like forget about it. There's no continuity of it. You're just like 5 minutes reading. You're not fully absorbed, and perhaps you're like, I'd rather read when I have like a full hour dedicated to like fully get absorbed in everything. And that is a very desirable state to be in, to get fully absorbed into a book. But the thing is, I think sometimes we need to strive for like the 5 minute bursts because they add up over time, and I don't think people realize it in general. Because there's so many times I just dismiss that, 5 minutes before bedtime, if I start this task, it's going to be longer than 5 minutes. What's the point? And the thing is, like, okay, say you stick to 5 minutes, you still get 5 minutes of, low quality things done, but 5 minutes of low quality is better than 5 minutes of nothing. Like, let's be completely honest. And like in other situations, say you take the 5 minutes and you get engrossed, and perhaps you like, I don't know, you kind of miss your bedtime, which is pretty bad to be honest, because like sleep is really important, which I only realized like kind of recently, because so many people glamorize like I can sleep when I'm dead or something, like things like that, and that's just like it's a terrible mindset that that's been instilled to me like as I was growing up, because the motivational kind of videos that kind of glamorize that, but that's a different topic altogether. But you say you do miss like miss like a different activity that you want to do because you get engrossed, you still get something done, and this is like it's like a really important activity, like you have to show up at a certain time. Then fair enough, it kind of makes more sense to not start the 5 minute task. But I mean, you can still get to the area you want to get to early and then do your 5 minutes or whatever. I think a lot of people have an apprehension to perhaps 5 minutes of reading because like, what's 5 minutes of reading gonna achieve? But then you'll go on your phone for like 5 minutes or even more than 5 minutes because you'll be like scrolling social media and completely lost in a time sink. And then if you think about it, you were so apprehensive to start the 5 minute task of reading. She's like, nothing will get achieved in 5 minutes. But then you actually pulled out your phone and spent longer than 5 minutes like scrolling pointlessly on social media. And it's just like you could have actually done something for 5 minutes that you said was zero value. Instead, you chose a different zero value activity, and you're like, what was the point? Because it kind of all adds up. Because we have like such an apprehension to things. I think we just make excuses. We make excuses that 5 minutes won't achieve anything. But then in another scenario, 5 minutes of perhaps washing the dishes, like, oh, I can't be arsed, man. I think 5 minutes is so powerful. Like so many 5 minutes just add up, and before you know it, your entire life could be different looking back if you just actually invest the 5 minutes into something that you want to do without apprehension, or to like not listen to that voice in your head that's telling you 5 minutes is pointless. 5 minutes is good. Imagine 5 minutes a day doing push-ups. How powerful is that? Like it's you could do like 3 sets of like a minute or something like that. Your whole physique could change kind of just from that small 5 minute difference. That minuscule difference. It's kind of insane. Picture in my diary was embrace the idea of progressing imperfectly. Imperfect progression, small steps. 5 minutes on research while watching a stream, go for it. Because there's so many times I'm perhaps watching a stream and I get super engrossed. I'm like, wait, I could be doing something on the side, but then I downplay it. I'm like, what's the point of doing something imperfectly? I could, like, write a tiny bit of something whilst I'm not fully focused because I'm watching a stream in the background. And yeah, perhaps it's better to be fully focused. But what if you embrace the idea of imperfectly doing something on the side? I mean, there is also beauty in being fully attentive in what you're doing too. So if you want to watch a stream or watch something fully attentively without multitasking, I think that's completely beneficial. But if it's something that you're just finding yourself getting like trapped in a time sink or something like that, you could just do that whilst doing something else and like chain it and instead of being apprehensive to the idea that I'm not fully concentrated, so this isn't worth it, just do it anyway. And before you know it, you might even put this other activity down and be like, I fully want to focus on reading. I want to fully focus on my research. Okay, that's it. I'm like kind of getting into the flow of it. I can like mute the stream and I start doing my work. Who knows? Chaining activities could be so beneficial. But I think general apprehension to wanting to be in the perfect state of motivation, perfect state of concentration, I think it's quite damaging to us. The perfect state is great, but it's not always available. So I think we really do need to embrace imperfect progression and just doing tasks imperfectly when available if we want to do them. Perfect flow, devoid of distraction, is romanticized too much. This leads to things never getting done, as we wait for that ideal picture perfect state of flow and put off tasks until we feel like it. There is something called the 5 minute rule, where it's just like if something's gonna take you 5 minutes to do, you may as well just do it because you chain those things on top of each other, you'll get a lot done. That's like a quick life hack or whatever. But I like to look at it in a deeper kind of context. In the case of even if something isn't gonna get done in 5 minutes, why not do it anyway? Start it, do a little bit of it, and before you know it, those 5 minutes add up, and you actually like you made some decent progress in the thing that you thought 5 minutes ain't gonna really do anything. You should embrace every little effort on a task. You only have 5 minutes to read. What's the point? We'd rather read when there's more time that's been dedicated. But I have rathered my entire life. Sometimes more dedicated time is not available. Embrace every 5 minutes. 5 minutes of imperfect reading over and over adds up. Yes, this fear of missing out, this FOMO in the fact that, if you were to read something while you're like distracted, and if you were to read something while you're in the perfect state of flow, you'll probably make different connections, and that is a very attractive state to be in, but sometimes you just can't reach that state, and it's just better to do things imperfectly. And you can always revisit it back and try and achieve a state of flow. There's no loss in like the reading of imperfect. Perhaps you don't get it properly the first time, and you're like, you kind of view it as a waste of time because like if I can read this page when I'm in the perfect state of flow, why would I waste my time reading it now imperfectly? And I think that's the way a lot of us think. I don't know if I can speak for everyone, but I think that is because I'm not particularly unique in a way. I think the way I think in general is quite probably natural to other people. I would be a fool to think I'm completely unique in my thought patterns. Yeah, so fear of missing out of flow versus poor quality reading or work holds us back. What if 5 minutes of poor quality sets the foundations for the lifelong pursuit of unfinished work? Seeds that were left unwatered, avenues that were left unexplored. People talk about micro learning. I see it a lot on like social media and things like that. And I think it's normally to market an app that like shows micro learning and like suggests topics. I don't actually know because I never actually looked at it. I'm looking at its most basic sense of micro learning. Like pick a topic that you're interested in, anything you're interested in. You got 5 minutes to look at it. Look at it. There's no holding you back. You learn something new perhaps, and what's the harm in learning something new? Embrace micro learning and 5 minute tasks. Even if nothing is done in 5 minutes, you could very well find that nothing is done over and over leads to my whole life is different over time. You look back, those 5 minute tasks accumulating over a year, you're like, wow, I achieved so much. And like you didn't even realize because it's just like these little negligible time periods that or what you thought to be negligible, but you actually, you got some things done. And you beat your brain's tendency to be so apprehensive towards these 5 minute tasks. This thing is like the more you get accustomed to, silencing that voice that's telling you, 5 minutes is nothing, that this isn't worth it, like we're never gonna do anything in this amount of time, or it's not worth it. The more you silence that voice and the more you pursue just doing little things, you build momentum, and you build as a habit, the habit of doing the things in these short periods of time, doing them imperfectly, embracing imperfect progression, just embracing, you know, working, I guess, embracing the steady pursuit of your goals without them having to be perfect. There's no shame in making mistakes, but I feel for most of us in childhood, due to just natural socialization in schools and natural tendency to point out failures and laugh at them, I think most people, due to that, have a natural shame towards failure, thoughts of shame surrounding the idea of failure. So a lot of people cannot really embrace the idea that failure leads to growth, because failure is painful, failure is dangerous, even. Like, that's how we think about it from an evolutionary kind of perspective, I think. Failure means we're going to get signaled out, we're going to get thrown out of the tribe. So we just don't want to fail. It's painful, it's costly. However, the avoidance of failure leads to things like procrastination, leads to hesitation, leads to like all these maladaptive voices coming from our prefrontal cortex of reasons why not to start something, why not to do something. And at the end of the day, the more we work on the way we speak to ourselves, internally and externally, the more that we can actually achieve, and it becomes a habit. And in general, it's something that I've struggled with personally. How common is it for you to just call yourself an idiot, call yourself stupid when you make a mistake, and you don't realize how powerful that is and how dangerous that is. Because for me personally, I've been very brutal with myself when it comes to making mistakes. Like, I would scream at myself, curse myself, even slur at myself and things like that before I like took those kind of words out of my vocabulary. And the thing is, the more you speak to yourself like that, the more it feels so unnatural when you speak to someone else and you try to give them advice. Because the thing is, the way I love myself, in quotation marks, love, the way I speak to myself, is the way that I see like how to be caring for someone. So if I'm were to like try and be caring towards someone else and want to exhibit patience, it just feels fake, because it's not how I cared for myself. The way I cared for myself was really poorly. I've been like, shouting at myself, screaming at myself, no exhibiting patience, calling myself stupid for making mistakes. So how can I ever love someone else or like exhibit patience with someone else without feeling like a complete imposter, because I'm just, I'm being overly polite because that's just what's expected from people, when, to myself, I'm like a complete monster to myself. It's just like, the more you love yourself and the more you're kind with yourself, the more you're patient with yourself, kind of like you should treat your own self as if someone that you love, because honestly, you should love yourself. You should be very comfortable with yourself. Like the natural, comfortable with the idea of yourself. But I think the idea of that gets skewed when we're just like fully living a life in comparison to everyone else. Like, why don't I look like this person? Why am I not as tall as this person? Why am I not naturally like this as this person? And like, before you know it, you're so like fixated on comparing yourself, especially with like social media being so prominent. It's so hard not to, because we weren't really built for social media, so we're just constantly comparing to other people's tweets, other people's images, other people's content online 24/7. If we're on the phones 24/7, and it's very easy to do that until you actually put it down, then you just build a life from comparison, and you very rarely look down and appreciate yourself in its most honest sense. In fact, appreciating yourself is seen negatively, I think, sometimes, depending on like how you look at it. Some people might think this person's full of themselves. You know, if you were to like say, okay, I'm beautiful, and if you were to say that in public, people would be like, what the hell is wrong with this person? Why is he so full of himself? But honestly, why not? As long as you're humble, why not love yourself? Okay, so that's the end of this video. It's a bit longer than I would have hoped, I think, but should be fine. If you guys enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like and letting me know in the comments how it was, like how you thought of certain themes and if it related to your own lives, and like maybe if you have your own interesting topics that you'd like me to consider talking about. And yeah, if you'd like to see more, please consider subscribing. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one if we continue doing these. And I'm in virtual. Oh wait, no, I'm gonna remove myself from virtuals. I'll just do it now. Ding. Yeah, he's dead anyway, man. There's no way he survives. I'm still inverted too. Yeah, I'm definitely taking this entire HP, bro.